This is Jerry Barrett talking. Today's date is May 20th, 1986. I'm interviewing Charles Fisher at Eastern Airline headquarters in Miami. Mr. Fisher, would you start by just talking a little bit about what you did before you came to Eastern Airlines?
Well, right before Eastern Airlines, I was with Airlift International as a coordinator, maintenance coordinator. I was there for about a year and a half. Prior to that, right out of the military, or the Air Force. And my background in the military was primarily nuclear weapons. So from Airlift International, I joined Eastern as an apprentice mechanic.
Okay.
And we had a 3-year program. Very, very good program. In fact, many of my classmates are now in management.
Oh, they are?
It was a good resource for management to find first-line supervisors. I guess my Eastern experience is the apprentice program for 3 years. When I graduated the apprentice program, I was a line electrician, line mechanic electrician. We got laid off. My whole class got laid off, and we had a choice to go to LaGuardia or stay in Miami and wait for our jobs to return. So I went to LaGuardia and spent about 6 months there as a line mechanic. I learned an awful lot about airplanes in those 6 months, probably more in that 6 months than I learned in the entire 3 years of the apprentice program. Of course, the apprentice program being theory, of course, line work, you really get your fingernails dirty. I didn't stay in LaGuardia but about 6 months, and then I went back to Miami as a technical writer. I went into publications, and there I was responsible for revising and maintaining the master copies of engine manuals, APU manuals, technical data that we microfilmed and for the employees to use as reference. I was there for about 2 years, and then I went to the Engine Service Center as a technical supervisor. And I worked there for 2 years, and as a technical supervisor, we were responsible for troubleshooting engines. When an engine was removed for unknown reasons, we would do some initial testing of the engines and then take the performance data and analyze it, and then we would control the work scope of that engine. We would tell the mechanics how far to go into the engine, what to look for. We get reports back and analyze. So we were really responsible for controlling work scope when we found, or for discrepancies. After that, I became a first-line supervisor. They needed someone on a second shift to, because we didn't have enough in there to, let me back up. In the department I was working in, technical supervisors, we did not have enough to cover both shifts. So I was asked if I would mind working as a foreman, first-line supervisor, and do the technical supervisory type work on second shift. I actually control the work scope while being a first-line supervisor. So I said sure. And the reason, there was a rule in the engine shop: you did not penetrate or go further into an engine unless you had an approval from tech control. And that's so the idea was, if you get a tech control member on the floor, we wouldn't have to wait for tech control. So
okay, I see.
I went to second shift, and I did that for probably 10 years now as a first-line supervisor in many different shops. I've worked, it'd be easy to name the shops I didn't work in the Engine Service Center. But from engine build, tear down, to fuel metering, weld shops, blades and vanes. Like I say, I spent about 10 years working just about every shop in the Engine Service Center. From there, we had a program start called Quality Circles back in 1981. And I've always been kind of a radical person, complaining about some things that we do and ways we could improve upon managing primarily. So when quality circles came along in '81, I was asked if I would like to be, we're starting 12 quality circles, and I was asked if I'd like to participate in that. So I said, sure. So we went to training, and I was a quality circle leader. And they were very effective. We had a lot of fun with them. There was a new excitement among the mechanics that, hey, someone's going to listen to our problems.
Okay.
So they were out there identifying problems and making presentations. It was very exciting. The Human Resources Department, Rick Hendricks and Lyle Mannion, who were doing the training, they noticed that the Engine Service Center was really enthusiastic and had a good potential for expansion. So they asked me if I would consider being a full-time facilitator. And of course, that's a staff position, so I was a little uncertain about it, but I thought, I said, sure. So back in '81, when I became the first full-time facilitator, quality circles really just took off and grew. And we went from 12 circles to 35 circles in the Engine Service Center. And not too many people know this story because of the problems the IM had, political problems between the IM and the company. When we stopped, when the IM pulled out of the quality circle effort, there was a negative connotation about circles. But the real truth is, and you could talk to most of the people in the Engine Service Center that were with the circle effort, wanted the quality circles. In fact, they wrote petitions to the union officials saying, we like the circles and we want them. So that was a positive influence. Let's see. I cannot recall the dollar savings that these circles came up with, but it was significant, in the millions. Mm-hmm. And I cannot recall the date, but it was about the time that we had the push-outs in Atlanta, when we went to the power backs instead of the push-outs, where you no longer needed 3 mechanics to push out an airplane. The pilot power-backed with his reversers. So there was a big confrontation between the IM and management, and that's when a memo came out for members no longer to participate in quality circles. So in effect, we lost all the quality circles. So during that period of time,
the memo came out from the machinists.
From the machinists, yes.
Yes. Okay.
So here was a good program that we were starting to see some results fail because of politics. And we're even hearing today that the effort was not successful because management chose the problems that the people worked on. There's a lot of misconceptions about what was going on with that whole effort. But these guys, they would meet an hour a week. They would identify their problems, and they would work through the process, and they would make a presentation, and there was not one presentation ever made that wasn't accepted or bought by management. So it was a real good effort. But when they pulled the plug, I guess the IM leadership, when they pulled the plug and the circles disbanded, there was a period of about a year and a half that not much went on. So what I did during that period of time was to help Human Resources in the quality circle effort in the non-contract area. I would go out into the system and help train problem-solving groups or quality circle and facilitators. We'd hold facilitator seminars, just this kind of stuff to support the quality circle effort in the system.
Well, had that started before the machinists, the quality circles in the non-contract?
No, it started with the machinists first, and then as the machinist effort was going, we expanded into reservations primarily. And then reservations, it just took off because it was very well suited for the quality circles.
So that's the area that you were doing the training facilities. Okay.
Primarily the reservation. It got to the point where, let's see, for about a year and a half there wasn't much activity, and I was getting a little nervous, to be honest with you, because I was really a maintenance guy, mm-hmm. And I could see myself doing more and more training, or that's all I was doing was training, and I was really losing touch with maintenance and the Engine Service Center. And my activity, I couldn't really justify, working 2 or 3 days a week and sitting the rest. waiting for a phone call to train somebody. So I went back as a first-line supervisor. And I worked there for about a year until this EI effort came along. And then I was asked by, I can't recall his name. Well, it doesn't matter. When they were considering putting this whole package together, this support team together, I was asked if I would, if I'd consider it. So I thought about it for a couple of weeks, and I indicated, yes, it is interesting. It was different, and it looked like it had a potential of lasting. It was a process that could last. And the way I understand how the EI process got started at Eastern was Borman was out making a visit to Boeing. And, you know, they have IM guys out there, but the relationship seemed to be a good relationship between the management and the workforce. So there was some conversation between Frank and their effort people, whoever they were. And as a result of that conversation, Mr. Black came to Eastern Airlines and made a presentation to our senior management as to the type of effort they have going, employee involvement effort, and the advantages that they've recognized. During the briefings, they also indicated that Boeing is a manufacturer, we're a service organization, and so what works for them may or may not work for us. So we should contact this firm called the American Productivity Center. It's a nonprofit organization, and we did that, and they came in and they helped Eastern design their EI effort, employee involvement effort. Okay, if I use EI instead of employee involvement? Okay. Let's see. There was a planning council formed, and it was set up by, they were all management people in the initial planning council, and they were selected by divisional VPs. And to start any effort, someone's got to be appointed, so that's what happened. This planning council, along with American Productivity, designed our effort. And our effort is primarily a parallel structure put in place, a planning council governing the whole EI effort for the corporation, and it's made up of representatives from the 4 institutions at Eastern Airlines, and the institutions being, this is the first time I've ever tried to explain it without a flip chart. Okay. So it's difficult. So you got a planning council, then you got one institution being the IEM, the machinist, one institution being the non-contract workforce, which is management and all your non-contract. Then you have ALPA and TWU, the pilots and the flight attendants. So each one of these groups has a steering committee, and they are overseeing the employee involvement effort for their institution. Okay. And the theory behind that is what may work for non-contract may not work for IAM.
All right, yes.
So, so there may be a little difference in the design. Also, the theory is that we're trying to change a culture at Eastern Airlines and change from an autocratic style to a more participative style. Okay, and the reason for the support structure is to support the effort until this culture changes. Once the culture changes, you can eliminate the culture, the parallel structure, the culture has changed, and now you have a new Eastern Airlines, or a new culture. And in theory, it sounds pretty good. The problems we're running into today is once a committee is formed and they go off and they meet, they tend to like to remain a committee. It's hard to disband. When is a proper time to disband? When is the culture right? We've also found out over the last two and a half years that where EI is working and working well, you do have participative management. Participative management and employee involvement are two sides to the same coin. You've got to have one, you've got to have the other, it just will not work. And we have found in every instance where you have participative management, EI can flourish and work, and you see significant changes in results.
When you say participative management, you just mean the fact that they are participative, or is that a separate program?
training management to be participative, getting the employees involved. There is a separate program. No, it's not a separate program. We have designed a workshop. It's a week-long workshop called the Peak Performance Workshop. It's a spin-off of a workshop that the consultants used. But we're putting managers, supervisors, directors, every member of management at Eastern Airlines, starting at the top, will go through this week training session. And we call it Peak Performance Workshop, and the purpose of that is to show management the advantages of being participative. Show them a new style, give them some techniques and skills. Also in the design, we have follow-up visits to find out, okay, what did you learn, what are you practicing, what are you having difficulties with, see if we can help you with those issues. So that is if you want to call it, it is kind of a separate program, but we're managing that on the support team. We're also managing a week-long training session for the reservations supervisor. We call that Res Team Management. Geez, I'm jumping all over the place now. But within reservations, they continue the quality circle effort, and they really excel during all this time. Currently in reservations, they're going through a structured change. They're hiring more people, but they're not having to hire more supervisors because they're going to a self-managed work team concept. And it's something that we kind of put together. We planted the seeds, and it's flourished. And what that is clusters or teams of people, 10 people to a team that report to a supervisor. And each supervisor can handle maybe 5 or 6 teams. But the teams are purely self-managed. They set their own goals. They determine when they can take breaks. They self-manage themselves. And what we do, or what they do, is instead of monitoring individual performance, we monitor team performance. Well, that's what it's evolved into. And then let the team take care of their own individual problems. And it's working very well. It's still fragile because there could be some problems that we're unaware with, but it's working real well. Tampa reservations is an example of what it can do for you. It's the most advanced of all the res centers right now. So we're putting together, we have a week-long reservation team management workshop that all the res supervisors go through, and it teaches them how to become a more effective facilitator, how to become a coach, what kind of skills are required in this concept, working with groups and teams rather than individuals. So we've conducted 2 of those, and they've been very successful. When the support team, first started, we did an awful lot of training, action team training, problem-solving group training, and this is teaching groups how to work a problem-solving model. We taught facilitator classes, how to teach people how to facilitative behaviors, what to do when you have dysfunctional behaviors in groups. So our method or our mode of operation in the first year, I guess 83, was primary training and getting these groups set up. Once we recognized that this stuff doesn't work unless you have participative management, we started utilizing people that we identified in the system as good trainers, and they started doing the training that we were doing, and we started going into the more advanced training and consulting. So the support team, the 12 members on the support team now, are becoming internal consultants. And that's what we evolved to now. Doing these peak performance workshops, res team workshops, there's where you establish a consultant-client relationship, so we can go back to the organizations and find out how they're doing and then give them follow-up or follow-up visits and feedback. So that's what we're doing today, an awful lot of consulting work. Because I'll repeat myself, because it is important. We did identify and recognize it just doesn't work. unless you have management that's participative and understands participation. That doesn't mean give away the farm. That doesn't mean not to manage, because we had many cases where managers said, okay, I'm just going to be participative, and they went to the the far end of the spectrum, and it became, what's the word we use, laissez-faire.
Oh, okay. All right.
And they were no longer managing. And that created as much, if not more, of a problem for the employees than when they were autocratic. At least someone autocratic, you know where that person is coming from. You know what to expect. When someone goes completely the other end of the spectrum, you never know what.
Mm-hmm.
You have no leadership, no. So we had a couple cases like that. So that caused us to refocus our training and say, hey, listen, guys, you can be participative, but you still have to manage. And you're going to be held accountable and responsible, and you've got to do the same thing for the employees, and they've got to know what their expectations are and this kind of stuff. So we were learning an awful lot as we were doing this stuff, and very successful in the reservations. There was a lot of success stories. 1984 was the best year I think Eastern has ever seen as far as labor relations, people working together. Mm-hmm. EI was a good word. I heard it just on the way up here. I was talking to a foreman, and he yelled to me, he says, you know what the EI means today? I said, no, easy insertion. You know, so there's some negative connotations as a result of just what's been happening recently. But in '84 was a banner year, mm-hmm. and as a result of 1984, everywhere we go, people say it does work, it will work, we can get back there again. There's no question. We've seen it, mm-hmm. So that's a plus we have. I guess give you another example of how the support team is functioning today. We got a call from a director saying that I'm having difficulty in a location in a station. Go up there and see if you can do something for us. So we are unique in that we're joined. We have the IM and management working together. So Paul and I, we hopped on an airplane. We took off. It was a Boston C check.
Paul Hughes is the IM.
He's the IM guy. And so we did something called an organizational diagnosis, where we go in and we have a feel of what the problem is. In this particular case, the C check. A C check is an inspection that an airplane gets so many hours. I don't know. I think it's 5,000 hours. It goes into a C check, and then it takes about a week to perform all the inspections and repairs. So Boston was having difficulty getting the C check out on time, doing all the repairs within a week. So we were asked to go up there and see if we could do anything to help them out. So the first thing we did, we go sit down with the manager and said, do you want our help? And establish a relationship with him as our client, not the person who called us.
Okay.
So, because it doesn't work otherwise.
If it's imposed by.
Sure. We told this directors, we will not give you any feedback. We'll go in and we'll try to help this manager out, but we will not supply you with any feedback, because we have to protect the client, which was acceptable. They got to play by our rules if they want our services. So we spent 2 days interviewing probably 20% of the organization, getting a good random sample, all 3 shifts. Probably just several little office, and we just one after another just interviewed people. Took all the data back and run it through a model, and we developed major themes. A theme may be communication around here sucks. We just don't communicate well. And then to support that theme, we would list statements that we heard, one-liners that we heard to support that theme. So we developed about 15 themes with supporting statements. Then we go ahead and give that data back to the manager and also the union leader. And said, okay, this is what we heard. This is what your people told us some of your problems are. Now, from there, you sit down with the manager and the union, and you work up an action plan to go ahead and start resolving some of these problems. And there's a lot of things that we can do to help the managers do that. This may not be a good example, because shortly after our intervention, they replaced the manager. But it was not. I don't believe it was a result of the diagnosis. I think it was coming. and it was probably needed.
Mhm.
But what the new manager who's just now on board, he's taking a look at the OD, the diagnosis, and he's saying, hey, we ought to fix some of this stuff. And he's taking the right attitude to go ahead and fix the problem. So I don't know, is that the kind of stuff you're looking for?
Yes, yes, very much so, very much so. It isn't clear to me right now, you're doing both non-contract and machinist?
Yes.
You're working in both areas at the same time? Okay.
Well, one of our goals on the support team, in fact, I just had this conversation with a couple of the IM guys yesterday, is to develop a support team that we're internal consultants. So when you go into an organization, they don't know where you come from. They don't know if you're IM, they don't know if you're management, but they're calling on you because of your services that you can offer. You know, so and that's what my goal is develop the skills of the IM guys on the support team and the non-contracts to a point where you go in and offer a service, and whatever the organizational problem is.
And you do that by beginning with certain kinds of understandings, like you're not reporting back to somebody about what you found out here.
Right.
You're sharing it with the client group, in effect.
Right.
And the client group, in the case of the machinist, is both the manager of the operation as well as the similar level at the machinist.
Sure, and then they make a decision what they're going to do with the data. If they may not want to do anything with it, which is fine. They're the clients. It's okay. See you later. If they elect to take some action steps, and we can help them with them, we'll go ahead and do that. And then what we do in 6 or 8 months, we'll conduct another diagnosis. And if we've been successful, there should be a change. And it's worked very well. Again, where you have management that's participative. And to me, that's the key.
It's interesting. Your training is really your training and your work experience prior to getting involved in the quality circles. It's all in technical kinds of things, engineering, electrical.
Yes.
And what you're doing now is all human relations, human behavior, and all that. How did you make that transition?
You know, I have often thought about that because I'll never forget. I never expected I would be the type that could stand in front of a group of people and speak. You know, with a small crew or no problem. But when I became a full-time facilitator and I was helping human resources with their training, and by training I mean small groups, 10, 15 people in training. That was difficult at first, but I got over that rather quickly. I was helping Lyle Manuel one day. He was going to speak at a big conference that was being held here in Miami, and they had all the maintenance managers from all over the system, directors and vice presidents in a hotel here. And I was just helping with the paperwork. We had done a quality circle presentation, and the vice president wanted the people to see what this presentation looked like and what these mechanics identified as problems. So we put all those flip charts up on the wall for the people to see. And Lyle said, listen, I'm going to be up talking to these folks, and I have to go backstage for a minute. And then when I go backstage, I want you to come up and say a few words. And I said, you got to be joking. I said, you're crazy. He said, hey, there's no time to get somebody else. You got to do it for me. So that probably was the turning point when I got up there, and I don't know, I cannot to this day remember what I said, but I remember everyone was laughing, they were having a good time, and it didn't hurt.
Okay.
It really didn't hurt. But I'll be honest with you, you still get nervous.
Yeah.
When I go into an organization and work conflict or work organizational issues, it's important to me. I cannot understand why we cannot use common sense management, and to me, employee involvement, participative management is just good sense. It's just the way people want to be treated. Treat people like people, and they'll respond. And I guess I've always believed that, and that's why I was a kind of a radical because they could never understand why management couldn't share information with the employees, why they couldn't ask employees for input before they made decisions. I saw millions of dollars wasted by equipment that we would buy, or buildings that we would build, and layouts that by these engineers, and they'd never ask the mechanics and the leads for their input, and then they would have to redo it.
Mm-hmm.
So I was a real believer, I guess, in participative management. That's how I got involved. In fact, on the support team now, I'm noted as the kinesthetic person, or the sensing person on the team. And we go through all these testing, and we put people in boxes, and they got me in this little box called ISFP. There's supposed to be 16 different personality types, so we're all in little boxes, and I'm in this little box.
Was that Briggs-Meyer?
Myers-Briggs, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Have you seen that?
Yes, a little bit, yeah.
And I guess I'm kind of proud. I'm the only SP on the team, and what I will do, I like facilitation, and I like walking into a group and watching what's going on, the interactions between individuals in a group. Mm-hmm. And I'm pretty good at identifying conflict and then just making interventions and trying to get people to work better together. So that's what I bring to the party for the group, and I've always enjoyed doing that. Mm-hmm. So maybe that's some of the driving internal things that got me in this line of work.
And then some of the skills that were needed to implement some of that, I suppose you picked up from the consultant, the
Yes.
Productivity Center, because they brought people in and actually did training of teams and so
Yes,
forth.
we went
staff.
through an extensive training. Yes, the support team, initially we've probably got an equivalent to 500 hours worth of specialized training.
Okay.
In fact, at one point we actually went to Houston and we did an organizational diagnosis for a whole base, with the consultants looking over our shoulders, giving us instructions prior to going in, and then monitoring what we did.
Right.
So it was very good. And Jack was just talking. He says, you guys probably have an equivalent to a master's degree in human resources by the training, and there's an awful lot of truth to that.
Mm-hmm.
I see some of the folks on the team, they can hear an instructor give a lecture and they've got it. There's other of us that it doesn't do any good until we go out and actually make mistakes and try it.
Yes. Yeah.
NLP, are you familiar with neuro-linguistic programming?
No.
That type of training, where there's been a lot given to the support team that we can use that help us in our business. So it's just been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of frustration though,
yeah.
Because one of our major tasks in the last year has been to manage damage control. And by that I mean trying to manage EI in an environment that management keeps screwing up.
Okay.
With some of the things, and of course, I'm sure they haven't got total control. But the Texas Air buyout was a definite, not a problem. It's being perceived as positive now, but when it was going on, there wasn't that much activity. The contract negotiations. There's 20% now. That's a big conflict in the workforce. The IAM guys, they're not part of this family because they're not getting 20% taken out and everyone else is. So that's creating some problems for us. And but fortunately, we're just trying to focus and don't take it. IAM guys have nothing to do with that. This is between the leadership of the IAM and the company. So
you try to isolate them from that and deal with them anyway. Is there any kind of holdover or residue from the fact that the quality circles were started and then for political reasons stopped? Does that taint somewhat the EI with the machinists, or?
No, we haven't noticed that.
Is that behind you?
Yeah, that's really behind us, and in fact, that's why we went from the name. See that it's ironic. The problem-solving training we do now for action teams, and that's the name they took instead of quality circles.
Oh, okay.
It's the same thing. The training is almost identical. The techniques that are used, the problem-solving model is, it's been juggled, but it's basically the same.
Oh.
When we changed the name, everything was okay. One of the problems the IM had with quality circles was Riker, I guess the inventor of quality circles, because he was known, or he was perceived by the International as a union buster.
Okay.
So the quality circle connotation was negative to the union. All you did is change the name and it's okay.
It's interesting, isn't it? I mean, perception is reality.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Good example of
that. Who's the team, the support team you talk about? Tell me who those characters are and how you relate to that.
Okay, we just lost Pat Levi, the guy.
Oh.
He was a maintenance type that came on the support team as our director. He was with us for about 18 months. His charge was he's like a patent type. Take the support team, the beachhead's established now, let's go ahead and march. And he's real effective at that. And like I say, his background was maintenance. He's just been promoted to Director Northeast Region. Paul and I are acting directors, interim directors, until our permanent director is appointed. Of course, you know my background now.
Yes.
I am the non-contract coordinator, responsible for all the non-contract activities.
Okay.
For me, working for me is Liz Young. She came out of the IM ranks, but she's now a member of management. And she's an EI specialist for the Northeast region. She's stationed in JFK. Very diversified background, a lovely lady, Chinese. Let's see. And then we have Babette Lawrence. She's responsible for the southern region. She's stationed in Miami in our office. She came from computer sciences. Again, a diversified background, primarily mathematics and computers. See, Liz's background, she was a stock clerk. And before that, she was the first lady in New York to get a plumber's license.
Is that right?
So, here's some of the background of these people. Babette Lawrence. Okay, then we have, we just hired, July of last year, Tony Noblog. She was a supervisor in Woodbridge reservations. And she is really into this whole participative management concept in EI. A student. I mean, she reads everything she can about EI and participative management. She's responsible for this the central region. She's also stationed in Miami. All she has is a reservations background. I shouldn't say all she has. She started as an agent and worked herself way up as a supervisor. So she's got a reservations background. Dave Henry, he's another specialist responsible for the western region, assigned in Miami. We took him out of Salt Lake City reservations. And his background is in reservations, agent. He was a S1 supervisor when we promoted him. He's got his, I think, master's degree in physics. He's got a physics background. He also ran a welding company. So he's got a pretty good and excellent in front of people type training skills. He's very, very good as a trainer. And I'm also allocated to hire 3 more people. So I've got 3 vacancies that we're getting ready to fill. So that's the people I have working for me. Did I leave anyone out? No. Then Paul Hughes, the IM coordinator, he's got working for him Wally Ditchler. He was a shop steward in the stock clerk area. I like him on the team because he's about 350 pounds, so he makes me look skinny. But Wally, he's a hell of a guy. He was the kind of guy that they call him one-a-day Wally. Before he joined the support team, he would actively go out and try to get at least 1 grievance a day. I mean, he was a real ball buster, and when I was a first-line supervisor in maintenance, I used to fight with that guy like he was a ball buster.
So he's been converted from But that
and
approach,
it's a living example of what a guy can do. Once a person develops some of the skills and starts believing and is loyal to a process rather than an institution, and that's something I think I can say for all the support team members. Their first love now is the process. They believe in the process, and second, allegiance, of course, to the institution. Of course, we say that. We don't know what would happen if the institution started calling in some debts. But so that's Wally. We have Mike Harris. He's stationed in Atlanta. He's also IM. He came off the ramp as a supervisor, not a supervisor. He was a shop steward on the ramp. And his whole background is ramp service. Let's see. Then we have Mike Walker. He's also a ramp guy. By the way, Paul Hughes is a ramp man.
oh, that's his background.
Yeah, he came off. He was loading bags, and but excellent potential. I mean, I really enjoy going places with Paul because you cannot tell, or you would not say Paul is from a union or from the ramp after dealing with him. He's just, he's proud of that. He's proud of his background of being a ramp guy, but he's got a lot of charisma, and he's got an ability about him to build rapport with people rather quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So he's a neat guy. Mike Walker, also he's from the ramp, and his background is aviation. He's a mechanic. Let me jump back to Paul Hughes. Paul Hughes is also a mechanic. He's got an A&E license, but he got into ramp and never got out. Mike Walker's background is, other than ramp, he does a lot of flying. He does general aviation maintenance. He takes care of a number of airplanes for this firm that flies power lines.
Oh.
So he's got a good mechanical background. So Paul's got those three guys working for him. Then we have a training coordinator, which is Rick Hendricks. He's responsible for the training, the internal team development, training packages, helping with agenda designs, this sort of stuff.
So he's a training. I mean, his background is in training.
He and Lyle Mannion were the two guys I was talking about when I would go in the system and help them train in human resources. They came out of human resources on the support team. And we just now made Rick the training coordinator. He was the TWU coordinator, but TWU is not in the process because of the negotiations and all that. They're not actively involved with EI yet, so we needed some help in training, so Rick's been moved over to training. Lyle Mannion is now, what's his title we call him? Planning and Development. He is really the father of the self-managed work teams. This guy is always on another planet. He is the most creative person I've ever met in my life. As far as designing agendas or conceptual things, I forgot the four-letter designator we call him. He's definitely an NT. He's just intuitive. He's always out there in another world. He's working real hard at trying to sense what's going on now because he'd just roll over you, trying to get to his vision. And as a result of that, he is super creative and can come up with some things that it's just unbelievable. That's why the team works so well together, because we're all different, and we can slow him down, and he can cause us to use our juices, creative juices, and we fight like cats and dogs. In fact, some people will come on the support team and they'll hear us actually behind closed doors yelling and screaming. They think we're killing one another, but actually we're working through a little problem, a little conflict. But when we get to the end, it's unbelievable. It's a hell of a product. The two workshops, I think, are a good example of that. And it took us a month to get through that agenda. I mean, just back and forth. I was just telling Jack, that's why Paul and I get along so well. And we've been, like I said, we're acting directors of the support team, and we work everything by consensus. And we disagree on many issues, and I was just telling Jack, it's okay to disagree. I wish management would learn that. It's okay to disagree. It's okay to fight. It's okay But then when you have to be loyal to a decision, let's be loyal, but never be afraid to disagree. And we have that on the support team. So as a result of that, I think the synergy and everything, we come up with a total product.
Do you have a sense that top management is supportive of this? You mentioned that Borman is the one who sort of plugged into the idea out at Boeing. Are they still with you, and do they understand really what you're doing?
I think Jack does. You know, of course, his background is EI. I think he does understand, and he's with us. We made a presentation. Well, when the Texas Air buyout came, Jack asked us to put together a presentation to justify ourselves.
Okay.
Excuse me. And
this was to the Texas Air people, or?
No, this is just, I guess,
internal, okay.
I guess all the senior VPs were asked to justify their organization, so Jack went through an exercise. And probably the best thing that's happened to us, because we put together a presentation to explain how we started, where we've been, where we're at today, and where we're going.
Okay.
And we gave this presentation to Jack, and Jack just sat there. He called up the consultants right away and said, "Did you guys have anything to do with this?" And the consultant says, "No." I said, "We saw the presentation, we liked it, but we had no input." And Jack said, "God, you're teaching those guys pretty good." Because it blew his socks off. I mean, it was, when you mention EI to probably most of the senior officers, they think of warm fuzzies.
Yeah. Okay.
Training sessions, expense, get together and it's warm fuzzy stuff.
No production. Right?
No production.
Yeah.
It's an expense.
Yeah.
So we made this presentation, and we showed Jack what we're doing, and it was an eye opener to him. So we made the same presentation to Joe Leonard just last week, and Joe Leonard, we felt he had a board meeting to go to at 2:00, and we could tell he didn't want to leave. And we spent 2 hours with him. And when we finished the presentation, it was just time for question and answers, and he had to go, and he didn't want to go. But we got feedback through Jack that he was really impressed. And so we've been given the go-ahead to hire more people. So I think, yes, senior management is supportive. And that's encouraging to us.
And that's with the full realization that the other point that you were making, that it only works well where there is participative management.
Mm-hmm.
So they're buying into that as well.
Sure.
Would you say? Yeah.
It's yeah.
Yeah.
It's easier to talk than to do in many cases.
Okay, we're back on.
I was going to say it's easier to talk about than to do, and it's an evolution. So what we concentrate on is trying to show management successes. When we target an organization to go into, we have criteria set up that says, okay, is management receptive? Are people receptive? What kind of training have they received? And once they meet certain criteria, we say, okay, let's go and give it a try. And then we hit the organization hard, and we try to build it and make successes, and then show the rest of management, this is what can happen if you really believe in this stuff and give it a shot.
Actually, how do you advertise what your successes have been? I noticed that in the Falcon.
Yeah, that's the only.
There's an article at the tail end of that particular one that I'm pointing at that told about it gave an example of where some EI had been used and it was a success story. Is that your major way of telling your story, except one-on-one?
That's our primary way. It's we have one page on the Falcon. The non-contract steering committee is now trying to put together a way to communicate successes to the workforce. And probably that's where it should come from. The Res System Site Committee. This is another site committee for. You got 10 res offices, and each res office has a representative on this one system committee. And this system committee is trying to develop a communication process now to share with the whole res center what's going on in EI and successes.
Okay.
We've just started a computer tracking system. We just 2 months ago we got the computer set up in the office, and now we have 10 test stations that are testing input to their local computers so we can gather the data, so we can kind of put together something to share it with the world. That has been our weakness. Our biggest failure is communication, setting up a process to share what's going on with the system. And we recognize it's probably one of the most important things we should be doing.
Apparently, your group is very good at making presentations. That is to say, to an audience.
Yes.
Because you do that as part of your training, and you also do it the briefings you just talked about to Leonard and to Johnson. But that's a limited audience always.
This.
And the other part of it is a group that you work with where you do have successes. That's a limited audience too. So the problem of merchandising, or whatever you would call it beyond that, is where there have been successes. You want to get that message across, but it's difficult to do. I would take it.
Sure. Yeah. You're right. And we have thought about ways to merchandise that, and it's difficult. We've considered a videotape, but that's a negative frame for most employees at Eastern Airlines. You know, we've had so many tapes come out with Borman on it, talking about gloom and doom and bad news, so the tape has become a negative frame. The Falcon is, we're hoping that will start getting people positive. But there's so much negative right now going on. We have difficulty when you get a group together and you start trying to talk about the good things and positive things of EI. Unless they've experienced it, unless they have management that's participative, they just don't understand it.
Yes.
You know, how can they're taking 20% of your pay. How can you be smiling? How can you be happy? Well, we see what can happen. The majority of the folks at Eastern Airlines do not know that. They cannot experience that. So we have difficulty not being defensive and being,
Part of it is, I suppose, you have to carry them along a little ways with your own enthusiasm.
Absolutely.
Until they begin to feel it and experience it.
Yes, absolutely.
How come there's nothing going on with the flight attendants, as far as EI is concerned? Were there ever quality circles there or anything like that?
No. It's primarily the leadership within the TW, as much as I know about it. There seems to be some internal conflicts within their own union. Some want EI, some don't want EI. They have representatives on the planning council, but the last couple meetings I've attended, there's been negative towards EI. So, we have found out you don't go where you're not welcome.
Mm-hmm.
So until they're receptive, until they want it, and of course we'll continue to talk it up and show them and the benefits of it. But they just haven't been that receptive to it right now.
It hasn't been a situation where there's been some bad experiences with it on their part?
No, it's just the environment.
Just has not allowed it,
Yeah.
The airline and business, of course, is unique in that people are spread so much.
Mm-hmm.
And I suppose with flight attendants, they're more spread than certainly people at a reservation center or at a
Absolutely.
an IAM base. Yeah.
And the unique thing about EI is to let them solve that problem themselves. It's okay. Here's a scheduling problem. How can you guys meet? I'll be honest with you. That is difficult for the pilots and also the flight attendants. I've been thinking about it for some time, and I think I've come up with a good solution to it. But what I want to do is go out and plant some seeds and let it be their idea.
Oh yeah. Okay.
But what I think would be real effective for flight attendants and flight crews is we have a number of people all the time off for injury. And I was thinking about putting a couple groups together made up of people on injury leave. And then all suggestions would be, sent to this group. Give them training, give them some problem-solving training, and while they're on injury leave, sometimes it's a year, it's long-term injury. to send all the suggestions to this group and let this group process them and do the problem solving. It just might work.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea. And it would keep them involved in the company.
Sure.
And
Let them be productive.
And a useful process.
It's true that the pilots have not done anything as far as EI is concerned.
Yes,
as well.
they have. They've been involved. They have their own steering committee. They call it the Flight Ops Steering Committee. They have 3 domiciles. They've got one in Miami, a site committee, one in Boston, and one in Atlanta, I believe. There's not much activity, but they're still talking. They believe in it, and they want to meet, and they're still trying to sort out how they can make it work for them.
Right. So your group has been providing support to them as well?
Oh, yes. Every time they meet, they call us up, and we'll go and help facilitate the meetings, and yeah.
But again, they have problems that are somewhat similar to the flight attendants in that they're so dispersed around the country.
Yeah. And of course, they're making big bucks, so I think the company would have difficulty trying to pull 10 pilots off the line to spend a couple hours a week in a problem-solving mode. You're talking a lot of bucks there versus reservation agents or mechanics. There's arguments on both sides of that issue. We remain neutral.
That's best.
Absolutely. That's the unique thing about the support team, is the perception that we have developed and created in a system where we have worked as being totally neutral, neither pro-company, pro-union. We are joined, that makes us unique, and we'll go and we'll facilitate. And we play devil's advocate on just about all issues, and just work the group to resolutions. Hard work sometimes.
Yes.
I was telling Jack, I woke up the other night in the middle of the night in my home, in my bed, and didn't know where I was at. I said, that's sending a message. And that happens to most of the support team members. It's the first time it happened to me. I'd heard about it, but it never happened before. And I woke up, and my wife was beside me. I should have realized it. But where am I at?
Yeah, that's really getting caught up, isn't it?
Oh, jeez.
That's really being caught up. I've heard the name of a professor from Harvard, I think it is. I want to say Blasey. Is that name familiar to you?
No.
He's apparently been doing some looking into the employee involvement program. Is that?
I'm unaware of that.
I think his name is Joe Blasey. You're not familiar with
No.
that? I just wonder whether what he was doing, or if you'd come across him looking into that. What next?
Well, if we've had one failure, if you call it a failure, it's the parallel structure is now to the point where it should start dissolving, even though the culture hasn't changed. What we were finding is that management and supervisors are using the parallel structure as an excuse not to manage. What we'd like to see happen in the future is for senior management and the senior institutional leaders to form maybe a joint committee, and then from that joint committee hold local management accountable and responsible for EI. Right now there is no accountability and there is no responsibility unless a manager happens to believe in it.
Okay.
And so it's not going nearly as fast as we'd like to see it. And I think we don't have that much time. I think we should get there as soon as possible. And in some cases, if it means replacing management or shop stewards, chief stewards, whatever, that do not want to go along with the program, so be it. So I think that's what has to happen, and that's the direction that I think we're going to focus on and push. I can see a station as an example like Philadelphia, or any station you can name, where the manager and the highest union official have to get together and they got to report once every 4 months of EI activity, what's been going on in your station.
Right.
And Frank and these guys are going to read that report. Well, Philly looks like it's going okay. If it's not going okay, give us a call. Support team, what's going on in Philly? Why isn't it? put some pressure on management to at least try this process, because we know it works. There's no question it works.
At the present time, when a manager, supervisor is evaluated, they have periodic evaluations like any personnel system. Is that a factor?
That's
Is
not.
that one of the items weighed to determine whether or not the person is performing well?
We're trying to encourage that, trying to get that the evaluation changed to include that, but at present it doesn't. In fact, that's a good issue. I really believe that when EI is successful, the whole evaluation process is changed. Once you identify who your customers are, as a manager, my customers are my supervisors. My supervisors' customers are maybe the mechanics or the lead mechanics. So why should my customers evaluate me instead of the other way around? And that's what we like to see. I like to see one day subordinates evaluate managers to see how they're doing. And and it's scary to a lot of people.
Oh yes, it certainly would be.
If you treat your customers right, you're going to get good evaluations. But more than that, you get good feedback, and that's what's essential. We try to role model that. We just did a training session in Atlanta last week, and there was an actual conflict going on between two of the instructors. I happened to walk in the room, and I noticed it. I sensed it, and they were so wrapped up in the content they didn't sense it. So at lunchtime, I started giving some feedback to these two instructors. Oh yeah, finally this one instructor admitted, yeah, well, you were intervening too much, and I was getting pissed off, and there was. So I said, why don't you guys go back and resolve that conflict in front of the group? Role play it. Do it right in front of the group. And hey, it sounds good. So they're trying to.
That's a gutsy thing to do, though.
Sure. Yeah. And it worked. The people responded to it because what happened, the audience knew something was wrong. They didn't know what. And then after the session was over with, I got phone calls. Was this staged? Was it really staged? You guys staged? Because we've been known to do stuff like that. Yeah. And I says, no, this particular one wasn't staged. You saw a real conflict being resolved. And but that feedback is critical. There's no way a manager can really see the benefits from participative management unless he gets that feedback. If you're an asshole, you ought to get that feedback also. And why are you an asshole? And
yes.
So that's maybe futuristic, but I'd love to see that. Maybe a dual evaluation process, one where you evaluate your subordinates and the subordinates evaluate you.
With the political problems that have been created around quality circles, and particularly with the machinists, do you see that being resolved? I mean, resolved somewhat in the same way that you're talking about on the management side, getting leadership to bring pressure on their people at varying levels within the machinist to actually be doing employee involvement.
Yeah. Paul would probably be much better to answer that question because he is involved in the political hierarchy of the IM. But I don't see it happening as much as I'd like. I don't see the effort in the union leadership as much as in the management leadership. Even though management leadership may be giving it some lip service, at least they're giving it something. Charlie Bryan is he's fully endorsing the process. He's saying, let's go with it. I believe in it. I can see the benefits. It's an opportunity for the employees to give input. He believes in holding lead mechanics responsible and all this kind of stuff. But I don't see that enthusiasm between Charlie and the rank and file. The middle management, you might say, in the union. I don't see it. And I don't know why, but I just don't see it.
Okay. You raised another point there that I wanted to ask you about with respect to the employee involvement, and that is there was some agreement a while back to begin to use lead men, particularly in the machinist ranks, in a much more active way, and to really to reduce the number of supervisors. Has that been a positive thing as far as EI is concerned?
I don't think it's either helped or hurt us because it would really separate from
Separate,
EI.
okay.
They did not call it EI. They said it wasn't part of EI. This was an effort set up by Human Resources. It was a bomb. In fact, we met the other day with Larry Sievers. I don't know if you know Larry Sievers.
No.
He's the Vice President of Human Resources. He's right under Jack Johnson. He's for planning. But we explained to him why we felt that program wasn't as successful as it could have been. Is because the lead man, they got training. They got some technical training, but they did not receive the training we thought they needed to become first leads and then understand what responsibility and accountability means and to get agreement by both the IEM and the company as to what you're going to be accountable for. That was never done, so it didn't work that well. So leads would go through a school for a week and they'd say, okay, now you're going to go out and we're going to hold you accountable for. Accountable for what? And then anytime a supervisor would come up and say, okay, this is, I'm going to hold you responsible for it, they'd say, up yours. And the stewards would come in, it was just a mess.
Yes.
It is working in some places. And at the same time, supervisors, they did not receive any training to let them know what was happening, what was coming down, what their new role would be. See, they were just under the assumption, these guys are going to take my job, they don't need me anymore, I'm a dinosaur. So in my opinion, it wasn't very well done. And it could have been much more effective if they had used, again, what we call the EI process to get both the leads and the supervisors involved right up front and say, this is what we're planning, this is why we're doing it. Supervisor, you have nothing to worry about, we want you to support it. Here's, this could be a new, well, what do you think your new role should be, and get them some ownership in that. And, so now they're asking us, Human Resources is asking us to come in and help them with phase 2 to see if we can try to salvage this whole concept. Because in theory, we totally support the lead concept. We think it's the only way to go. But again, it's a change, and when you start changing, you got to get people involved. You got to get the ownership, and you can't do it overnight. It's a slow process, and you got to make sure people have the skills to be able to perform the way you want them to. And so, the chief agent concept is very similar. When people
I don't know that one, Tom. Tell me.
Well, it's very similar to the lead concept, except chief agent is for the agent ranks in the airports. Instead of having supervisors, they made people like leads or chief agents.
Oh.
And
Now, these are non-contract
Right.
employees. Okay.
And the supervisor, his role changed a little bit, and some of the same mistakes were made in that whole process. When we made the presentation to Joe Leonard, we talked about the self-managed work teams and how the supervisor became the facilitator or coach for maybe 5 or 6 teams, 10 people on a team. And Joe right away picked up on that because he related that to the leads and the chief agents. He said, well, how's it working? And we told him, well, why is it working so well? So we told him about the evolution it took and all the preparation it took before you ever made a self-managed work team, and it took months and months. In Woodbridge alone, they must have spent 4 months just preparing the agents for the change, and getting supervisors involved up front about what the roles are going to be, and once they bought into it, to have them go out and train the employees, and training jointly with the employees who believed in it. So it was a slow, calculated process for acceptance, and it worked real well. And Joe says, well, now I can understand some of the problems we had with the leads and the chief agent program. Again, it's going back to what I call a common sense approach to change and managing people.
With the IAM lead men, that process or that change they made there was actually negotiated, wasn't it? Wasn't that something covered in their negotiations? The idea of reducing number of supervisors and increasing the responsibility of the lead?
Yes, that was Bill Ustry's. A lot of people think that was an IM tactic to reduce supervision, but the way I understand it, it was during the negotiations, Bill Ustry kind of included this. If leads would accept more responsibility, we could reduce management by 5%. And, you know, it's right, it's true, and it should be done. It should have been done all along. So I don't know if it was actually negotiated. There would be a lead man program, and the leads would accept more responsibility. I'm not sure about that. But I agree with whatever, you know, however it came about, I agree with it. I lost what I was going to say. But the lead mechanics, I think, would accept that additional responsibility if it was done with proper training and proper, you know, and have Charlie Bryan stand up there right next to Jack Johnson or whoever and say, okay, this is what we agreed to, guys, and this is going to be your job, and this is what you're going to be held responsible for. And then when you do the training with the leads and the supervisors, you do training with an IM guy and a management guy right there together. And you say, this is what management union has said. Do you agree with? I mean, make it perfectly clear.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's not being done.
Were you once a member of the machinists?
Yes, I was. Well, I joined Easton as an apprentice mechanic. So I went through that apprentice program. And then the mechanic, see, I've been with Easton 19 years. I've got 18 months seniority, mechanical seniority. In the apprentice program, you only get half seniority. So I was a mechanic for about 4 years. Then went into management.
I take it what you've been doing the last couple of years you enjoy a lot.
It's got its moments.
Yeah.
I never knew or understood burnout until I joined.
Yeah.
You can get mentally exhausted. I started smoking 3 packs of cigarettes a day, and I finally quit those. And that's cost me 55 pounds. So there's some
trade-offs
there. So now I'm on Shackley's and trying to lose weight. But there's an awful lot of frustration associated with it. To answer your question, yes, I really do enjoy it. But it does have its moments. I think that the effort to do more than any other program Easton has ever started, if they continue it, and if they get clear on accountability and responsibility, if they really believe in this stuff, let's do it. And let's start holding management accountable for it.
Mm-hmm.
If they don't, let's get rid of it. That's some of the frustrations we have. We're getting signals that they do believe in it, which is positive. I'd just like to see it a little more structured. Well, I should say it's a little less structured by removing that parallel structure, but more structured and holding management accountable for it. I'd really like to see that. And I think they would see instant results. And see what that does, it forces management to work with the institutional leaders. That has to happen, you know.
And right now they can operate without doing that, without being directly involved with the institutional leaders, because they got the parallel structure
Right.
there that kind of deals with that.
So what we're doing now, we're kind of back in limbo right now, nurturing what we've got going and keeping it going until we can get Charlie Bryan and Joe Leonard or whoever to sit down at a table and say, okay, let's let bygones be bygones. We got to run an airline, because I'm sure there's a war. There's a war coming up with his 20%. So there's really not much we can do until all that scenario, you know, is over with, and they can sit down, both the union and company, said, okay, this is what we believe in, guys. We got to go for it, and we're going to hold you accountable for it. And that's the day we're waiting for.
Mm-hmm.
So we're just kind of nurturing what we got going and targeting, looking for good opportunities to target for any new efforts. And that's enough to keep us busy. I mean, they keep us running. The specialists average about 3 weeks out of a month on the road.
Oh, they do that much?
Oh, yeah. That's why we need those 3 people.
Yeah. With those, with 3 positions you have open, are you going to hire internally?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, that's our first choice.
Your belief is that if they know something about the business already, the airline business, some portion of it, you can give them the other skills they need to, or would you be drawing primarily from people that are already at some level involved in the EI program. Is that where you recruit from initially?
That's where we have recruited from in the past, someone who has been involved with, that meets the criteria. We haven't had to go outside yet because yeah, I think the best salesperson for EI is someone up through the ranks that have acquired the skills and are out there and they're doing it.
Mhm.
And they have a lot of history and a lot of stories they can tell to support the whole process. So we've had some discussions. I think, yes, we could hire external consultants from the Corps to be on the support team, and they're probably much more eloquent, and they have much more skill, many more skills than what we currently have. But there's just something about getting an IM guy who was a one-a-day grievance guy,
Yes.
and get him in front of a group, and they say, "This is not the Wally I knew,"
Yeah.
and that is powerful.
Yeah.
It's really powerful.
Somebody who has seen the light, in effect.
Sure.
Yeah.
To get an agent who was a reservations agent who's got skills, you know, is a teacher at heart that believes in this stuff, to give them the skills and see them transform into a real believer, or, as Jack calls it, a crusader. That's exciting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Is there much concern right now that maybe Texas Air doesn't believe in this kind of thing, that their style is different than that, or?
Yes, there is some concern. Everywhere we go, we get questions. Do they really believe in it? Well, I was just talking to Rick Barrett, and he says they do have an EI. It's like a gain sharing. It's different than what we've got, the way I understand it. I don't perceive them having EI. I perceive them having gain sharing. Rick is telling me it is EI, but in everything we've been taught, money is not a motivator. In every case, I mean, yes,
Yeah.
it's a good incentive, but it may not be the motivator that we're looking for to change, managers and change people to treat people right.
More money doesn't necessarily do that. It's
Yeah.
opportunity for input, for growth, and things like that.
And we feel that's what's needed at Eastern Airlines, or I feel that way. We've got a history. We've got a big history out there of the type of people we promote, and they're autocrats.
Okay.
In many cases, they're autocrats, and you go out there and try to get that to shift, to change, or give them the skills to be more participating. It's a tough job.
Yeah. Particularly with a history of rewarding certain kind of behavior.
Absolutely.
To talk about another behavior.
And that's
People
what
are going to wonder. Are going to wonder. Yeah.
So to have a money incentive to do a better job, I don't know. It'd be nice. In fact, the company just approved an incentive package, or a gain sharing program for the non-contract workforce, and that's going to be out probably in the next Falcon. You'll be reading about it, where they can get cash rewards for suggestions. I think, and it's every member's belief of the support team, that once we're successful, we'll dissolve. And so our task is to work ourselves out of a job. Maybe we would never work ourselves out of a job, because I think if you develop a core of internal consultants, they could be utilized.
Mhm.
And we can always find a place to utilize them. I think if Texas Air could, if they knew what we're up to, what we're doing, they'd buy it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
In fact, we could probably help them at Continental or New York Air.
Yeah.
Never know.
Do you know if other airlines are doing anything similar to this?
I have not heard of anyone doing it to the extent that we are.
Mhm.
Probably in the business, Boeing may be the closest, but that's a manufacturer.
Yeah.
What they're doing at Ford is very close to what we're doing,
Okay.
and their employee involvement effort. Of course, they're staffed 10 times what we are for the employees. We're trying to do a whole system, with 12 people. It's difficult.
That is pretty difficult, yeah.
And I could justify 50 people.
Mhm.
But we'll get there one day.
Mhm.
It just makes sense. We got to get there. It's just good sense.
It must be frustrating to you from time to time to read things in the paper about some quick analysis of Eastern that suggests that you're not doing well. I don't mean you personally, but the corporation's not doing well.
That's why I don't read papers anymore.
Okay.
No, yeah, it's, I don't know what has happened for Eastern to get some of the press it gets. I just can't, I just don't know, because, yeah, the press is often too quick, or they haven't done enough study or enough input before they make, or write some of these articles. And it's discouraging, because I think if they really knew, there's a lot of positives, like we were talking earlier, there's so many good things. I strongly believe that the employees of Eastern are some of the best. Without question, the way we've been managed for 10 years, and to me indicates that we do have good employees out there. Because they're the ones holding this place together. With all the gloom and doom and the black clouds and everything that's going on the last 5 or 6 years or so, for the employees to still to react and respond the way they do is just incredible.
Yeah. That is a good argument, really. That argues very strongly for them being pretty conscientious people and interested in the corporation succeeding.
Yeah, I oftentimes worry about the leaderships of the unions and sometimes management. Some of the things they do to box themselves in the corner where they just cannot get out. To me, Usry was magic. You know, to pull off some of the things he pulled off. In fact, I wish he'd come out and give our support team some lessons in facilitation. But how many times can you do that? You know.
Yeah.
You would hope that once you make interventions like that, people would learn by it. But I just see, I constantly see the leaderships just getting themselves boxed in, and they have no place to go, so they have to react rather than and be proactive and trying to work some of this stuff out. You know, you talk to Brian one-on-one, man, it sure makes an awful lot of sense. You talk to Joe Leonard one-on-one, it sure makes a lot of sense. Well, why can't we get all these sensible guys to say the same thing? We're all together, you know?
Yeah, that is frustrating, isn't it? When they both do see the vision, but they don't see it together. Well, this has been most interesting. I really appreciate your time to sit and visit with me about this and share your thoughts and experience with it. It's really an exciting area.
It is. It is super exciting, and I just wish you could, or if you ever have a chance, come out and meet the sport team.
I'd like to do that. I would do that, yeah.
It's a bunch of, and that's what's unique about the group. It's just a bunch of Eastern employees that have gotten together. They've learned a bunch of skills, and they're out, you know, they're out there as not gurus, guerrilla fighters, really. That's how the consultants classify it. And you're out there, and you're just plugging and you're fighting, and you just make sure you don't stick your head up too high where you get shot off. You just keep up and just bouncing around the system and doing what you can. And it's unique, it's joint, and they really believe in the process. And it's I think it's going to be because of that belief that it'll be successful. If it is not, I can't see how Eastern will be. I think eventually Eastern will get there. If it takes a Texas Air to come in and force us to start managing right, whatever, we'll get there though.
I'm going to end on this note. Just thank you. Appreciate your time and your willingness to chat about your experience here.
It's been my pleasure.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.